Tonight, we put the focus on a new bill by a US Republican senator. If that bill is passed by policymakers, that's all set to disrupt the growth of India's growing services sector, and it threatens the cost advantage that's been enjoyed by service providers, especially in the tech sector, Nivedna.
Absolutely. I mean, look at the bill that has been introduced by Ohio Republican Senator Bernie Moreno. Is known as the Halting International Relocation of Employment Act, better known as the HIRE Act. In fact, let's tell you, it aims to slap a tax on US companies who outsource jobs overseas. And that is, in fact, synonym whenever you think about the market in the US, Sumita.
Absolutely. So the HIRE Act, it is essentially proposing a 25% tax on outsourcing payments, while experts are of the view that the bill is unlikely to pass in its current form because of strong US corporate interest in Indian outsourcing. The bill, however, could be detrimental to India's IT and services sector. Exactly how and what are going to be the larger ramifications? We're now joined to discuss that and more. We're now joined by Dr. Ganesh Natarajan. He's the executive chairman of 5F World and GTT Data and former chairman of NASSCOM as well. Thank you very much, sir, for taking the time out and speaking to us here on ET Now. Mr. Natarajan, is the bill or the passage of the bill, is this feasible for the Trump administration to do at the moment that it is being talked about, given the backlash that Donald Trump's tariffs are facing by BRICS countries, now European Union as well, and overall the scale of, the extent of this bill is so large that it might be difficult to immediately tariff the sector. Do you think that's feasible?
No, I think legally everything is feasible because they're talking about a tax. Now, my only point is that over the last 10 years that I've been active in the industry overseas, I think we have found that there have been multiple attempts to introduce such a bill. We must understand that the bill to get to vote in the Congress itself is quite an effort, and it's not happened in the past. If it does get through Congress, it goes to Senate, and Senate has to pass it by a 60-40 margin, which in this Senate is very, very unlikely. So if you ask me, the likelihood of such a bill passing is very, very low. But I mean, obviously, Senator Moreno is trying this, and there has been a lot of outcry, whether it's Loomer or it is, I think, Pate Navarro. A lot of people have been talking about it. So there is a kind of momentum to say that, look, let jobs be in America. But I don't think, because the ramifications of a bill like this would be so huge on almost the entire segment of corporate America, I find it very unlikely that this will pass.
You know, Dr. Natarajan, as you make that opening remarks and given the way, how this is essentially perhaps going to pan out, but I want to understand from your vantage, is this Indian IT sector's biggest test yet?
When I was chairman of NASSCOM in 2008, there was a subprime crisis, and I remember speaking in Wall Street, and everybody was saying, "Oh my God, how much will your industry decline?" And I very bravely put my neck out and said 3% growth, and sure enough, we grew 3.5%. I think we've been through many tests. See, we are now so, irrevocably entrenched in large corporations' fabric in terms of systems, processes, etc. I think it's not going to go away. It is a test. Artificial intelligence is a test. Automation is a test. But we will live through this and survive. I think the ramifications of something like this, as I mentioned earlier, is so huge that I don't think corporate America will allow something like this to happen.
All right, Mr. Natarajan, we'll have to see whether the Senate clears this bill or not. But at this point, you're suggesting that it's very difficult for this bill to be implemented. But, the thinking behind American policy makers, does the U.S. currently have the talent pipeline and labor supply to sort of support the vision that the U.S. administration is, sort of hinting at, it is planning and preparing for? Are Americans equipped to fill these jobs?
No, not at all. But if you look at what they're saying, that the money that they get out of this tax will go into a fund, which will go into workforce development, et cetera, et cetera. So in a sense, I mean, what you're seeing is something which could be very short term in terms of taxation and trying to implement a very long term capability building plan. See, the reality is that many citizens in various parts of the world, including America and Europe, are not particularly interested in the type of coding, testing jobs that Indians have been very adept at. And if you look at even the bunch of IT CEOs who went and had dinner with President Trump at the White House last week, I mean, they're all people who are extensively using India, either through talent, through outsourcing, through global competency centers. So I think they're so embedded in the psyche of American corporate systems development that I don't think we can be replaced very quickly by a bunch of Americans being trained. So it's a long process. We have to be watchful, of course. I'm not trying to be arrogant. I think we have to be watchful to make sure that no negative developments impact us. But at this point of time, I'm pretty sanguine about the immediate future.
Right, Dr. Natarajan, in a sense, being cautious is the word. But I want to focus on what the US rhetoric has also emphasized on, calling it days of slave wages are over, and also targets the cost arbitrage that the Indian IT, in fact, has historically provided. From your vantage point, how are we looking at that?
See, my point is very simple. I mean, people keep comparing Indian wages with American wages or European wages. The reality is that the IT industry has been an amazingly good employer. People who have come to IT, including myself, I moved here from manufacturing 30 years ago, have stayed on because there is such a value add that we do in this IT services industry. So I don't think, all these rhetoric, as you rightly mentioned, about slave wages or whatever, can really hold water in the sense that this is a industry which has grown extremely well. We are now employing close to 6 million people, and they're all doing very well for themselves and their families, and they're very happy with what they're doing. So I think there is a strong contingent in India which is very active in this industry. I mean, all companies, including our own, employ people in America, and there's no doubt about that. So it's a combination of using or doing work where it is most appropriate. Where work has to be done in India, we should do it. Where work has to be done closer to the customer in America, we will do it. And this is the same model that has been applied by American tech companies and American user companies. So I think it's a good situation today. I don't see anything coming to kind of throw a spanner into the works in the near future.
Right, Mr. Natarajan, but let me also ask you about, the fact that how do you really reconcile with the fact that Donald Trump has extended an olive branch to India? He stated that has a very good relationship with the Indian Prime Minister, and he likes him very much as well. He's a great Prime Minister. The PM also has appreciated how Donald Trump thinks about India-US ties. There are back-channel talks also happening. Will there be a rethink on this?
I certainly think so. My own expectation is that within the next maybe 3 to 4 weeks, maybe 6 weeks, we will get some kind of an agreement on tariffs, which is where the whole discussion started. I mean, I'm very appreciative of the Indian stance because we have taken a very strong stance to protect our agriculture workers, the food exports, et cetera, et cetera. So given that, I think if we can come up with a rational point of view, I mean, whatever the numbers is high teens, 20s in terms of tariff, and of course, primarily on products, not on pharma, not on IT services, not on IT products, I think we will all live to fight another day. And I'm absolutely sure that whether President Trump or Prime Minister Modi, they will be already figuring out what is the best way to move beyond this and continue the very amazingly good India-America partnership.
Absolutely, Dr. Natarajan, given how they would perhaps navigate and what that outcome will be remains to be seen. But I want to ask you this. Is this essentially a cut that the Trump administration wants for every dollar that America Inc. makes?
Well, I don't think so because I mean, as I said, I don't see this bill that Senator Moreno has introduced as very thought through. It's almost like an emotional response, saying that I mean, Americans have to get more jobs in this economy, and is too much work going to outside, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's a question of rational people will get together, both in the White House and, of course, in the corporate sector, and come up with something that makes sense. And what this bill is doing doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for America. It doesn't make sense for India. I really don't see it pass.
So, Mr. Natarajan, why is this proposal even being made?
This is politics, and the reason why it's happened before as well, as I said, is there is this perception that American jobs for America. I mean, I'm sure at some point we'll say Indian jobs for India. Why should people come and eat our lunch? But at the end of the day, this is a flat world. It is. I mean, all the borders that we talked about breaking in the past have to be broken because work will flow to wherever it is most optimal to be done. And this whole perception that India is cheap labor is completely wrong because today the kind of value addition we do, whether it's in artificial intelligence, in data engineering, in digital transformation, is so immense that's why I said India is an essential part of the technology ecosystem. And it will continue to be probably the prime area or prime country where work is done for global clients anywhere.
Also also going to ask you that. Why do you think, what would be the rationale behind this? But instead, let me ask you this, Dr. Natarajan. How should Indian IT companies now navigate this narrative, while, of course, maintaining global competitiveness and protecting employment in India? Because this would have triggered some sense of response as well.
No, I mean, if you look at the response of our amazing minister, Ashwini Vaishnav, I mean, Mr. Vaishnav has very correctly said that we are engaging. We're engaging with global lobbies, we're engaging with global customers, I mean, who have these, I mean, over 1,600 global competency centers in India. So I think it's just a question of being the voice of wisdom, saying that, look, good work is happening. Let's not upset the apple cart, and let's continue and grow from here. I think that is really the only response that I can think of for India as a country, our ministers and our government, and of course, all the CEOs of the corporate sector and NASSCOM.
Right, Mr. Natarajan, even though you state that, of course, it remains to be seen whether it gets passed by the Senate or not, which is unlikely, you say, but let's also prepare ourselves for anything that the Donald Trump administration could do. We never thought that, 50% tariffs could be imposed by the Donald Trump administration on India, which it calls its very good friend. But let's see the impact on the IT sector. Now, the IT sector exports about $225 billion in software services globally. Put into perspective for our viewers, the kind of turbulence that this proposal is going to have on IT firms, India's overall IT industry, which as it is grappling with the automation impact. And of course, there's a whole lot more also that's happening as far as the IT sector is concerned.
See, I'm an eternal optimist, so I've not looked at all these doomsday projections. But if you want me to crystal ball gaze on doomsday, I mean, if you're an American company and you suddenly get this 25% tax, and it's a huge vexation. On the other hand, there are local companies saying that, look, oh, AI can transform everything for you. You would do a rethink. You would do a rethink and saying that, look, should I do outsourcing at all? How much of outsourcing should I do? How much of the processes that are currently managed offshore can that be kind of completely reimagined through artificial intelligence? So these discussions would start, definitely. So is it detrimental for the IT industry for a customer to have a 25% tax on services being given to us? Absolutely, it will be, because people will start asking hard questions, which is why I'm saying it is in everybody's interest that status quo continues, that we continue to grow with our clients. It's good for every country that of origin that gives business to us. And of course, it's good for India. So I think the response has to be wait and watch, engage, and be prepared for any eventuality. But at the same time, I think we should prepare for growth. That's really what the watchword should be.
Right, and beyond the immediate financial impact, Dr. Natarajan, what strategic and operational challenges do you perhaps foresee?
Well, I mean, obviously, if a tax like that is imposed and you see a slow dwindling of work coming to India, then you will have to retrain people, not only in our Indian centers to move abroad. And then, of course, there will be the double whammy of visa tightening that's already being talked about. So there are, I mean, it's almost, as I said, the doomsday scenario can go further and further and further, and you can just get stuck into a quagmire of, lots of problems everywhere. But if that happens, I think we're prepared, because most Indian companies have centers outside India. I mean, there are a lot of American centers that most of the large companies have. So it's just a question of scaling up, scaling down, doing what is appropriate, looking at where value can be delivered better if there is a new restriction on how value can be delivered from India. So all these hypotheses we can always draw. But as I said, at this point of time, there is no doomsday scenario. So I think we should be better off just waiting and watching.
There is no doomsday scenario, but let me also ask you and take the point forward that we were talking about earlier, just in case this bill gets passed. Now, India, if you see, it's been looking at newer geographies when it comes to mitigating the impact of tariffs. But if this proposal is passed, Mr. Natarajan, what are the alternatives that the IT sector is left with, and how much can diversification in this context really help the IT sector?
See, if you look at markets, I mean, there is absolutely no doubt that the USA has been, is, and will continue to be India's biggest market. So we can't wish it away and say, look, instead we'll start focusing on Saudi Arabia or Southeast Asia or Europe, because those markets are just not big enough. Having said that, I mean, we've been having a bit of a discussion in our own product ecosystem group over the last 2 days. And today, if you look at the products that are consumed in India, that's very low. I mean, potentially that's a $100 billion opportunity to really cater to the domestic market. So I think if you look inwards and say that, look, what kind of solutions in terms of products, services, platforms will be consumed by Indian customers. Extrapolate from that, like many of us did when we started our companies, saying what are the proximate markets? Can we also look at Southeast Asia? Can we look at the Middle East? Can we look at maybe parts of Central and Eastern Europe? All these are new markets, but I would never ever say that we can replace America, because American customers have grown with us. They've benefited from us. We have enormously benefited from them. I mean, I don't know the exact numbers today, but I mean, when I was running my own software company, Zensar, I mean, almost 80% of our revenues came from the US. So potentially maybe 65% still comes from the US. So that market certainly should stay, and should stay as a very vibrant part of our ecosystem.
Dr. Natarajan, on that note, I want to thank you very much for joining both Sumita and I on the show. But for the moment, we leave the conversation at that.